I'm Chris.
I'm Sandy.
And this is Parenting Autism. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 134 of the Parenting Autism podcast. It's our first podcast of the new year, 2025.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And we don't really have any notes today because we're just going to catch everybody up on what's happening.
Yep. Life with the Coulters. So, we're going to try to, if I could talk, we're going to try to not make it too long because we are recovering from the flu still. But we're here, and I just want to get back on the air and do another podcast because I listened to the last one that we did at the end of November when we shared about my cancer. And we said at that time we would know more at this time, at the beginning of the year. And we kind of do. So I just wanted to give an update because I know there have been people who have reached out and have been concerned about us. And, you know, it's good for us. So anyway, having said that, I have been back in the hospital since we did the last podcast episode because of the cancer. And we had mentioned before that my IgM blood level was very high, which requires hospitalization to do the plasmapheresis. So I did have to go back in there and get a couple more treatments to get that number down. Then I was able to get the other chemo that I couldn't get on the first round while I was there in the hospital. I got my chemo port in while I was in the hospital. So we accomplished a lot that week. It was a rough week, but we made it through that. And then I made it through my second round of chemo, Christmas Eve and the day before that. And I've responded really well to the treatments, and I have not had really bad side effects from the chemo, I would say. I've seen worse in others, let's just put it that way. So I'm very grateful. The only downside to the post-chemo this time was that you got the flu. On the 23rd, you started showing the symptoms, and we really couldn't. Bryce and I were thinking about going to my mom's to avoid it, but it was Christmas Eve and Santa was coming here, and Bryce still believes in Santa. Yeah. So anyway, it was a delicate situation that we knew Santa was coming here, and I was already having to make a phone call to the North Pole to let Santa know that Bryce would be sleeping in my room instead of in his own room, because apparently you had told him when you're 11, you have to sleep in your own room in order for Santa to come. That's what he told me. So I was like, well, I have a number for Santa. I'll call him. You know, we were like trying to wing it because you were quite sick. So we did quarantine you to Bryce's room. I just have a feeling you probably came out while we weren't here because we were gone half the time to celebrate Christmas Eve over at the family's house. And we went over there Christmas Day as well. And so unfortunately, the flu germ did find me because my immune system is pathetic, and I got pretty sick. But we made it through. We're on the tail end. You're hoping not to cough too much in this episode. I have a lingering cough. You still have some lingering congestion, but we're here. We're here, and that's kind of, in a nutshell, what's been going on from a sickness standpoint. But there's been other things happening too, and that's why we're on here, or to share those things as well. And so as far as Bryce goes, and as far as what this podcast is called, Parenting Autism, and Parenting Bryce in our circumstance, because he's certainly much more than, air quotes, autism. He's an incredible young man that is trying to understand what's going on with me and has really handled it better than I would have expected. What would you say?
Yes.
You agree with that? Yeah. I know I'm talking a lot, so we don't trigger you to cough much. But yeah, I feel like Bryce has handled it really well. I mean, he's obviously had some questions. I think it helps when he sees me feeling better, but he also knows there's days when I'm not going to feel good, and he's okay with that too. We haven't been back to church yet, mainly because we haven't been feeling good with all the sicknesses going back and forth. But I also have to be really careful with my immune system. And so I was thinking about going today because this is Sunday. And then Bryce said, well, I don't think we can go, Mommy, because you could scare people with your cough. And it is a nasty cough. So that's Bryce. He's genuinely concerned and considerate about other people. And he's right. I mean, I can clear a room. If I cough, people will want to run and hide. And I think that's what Bryce said. People will want to run and hide. And it's true, because you don't want to catch what it sounds like I have. But I know he misses being at church, and he misses leading the singing in his kids' room and stuff. So Lord willing, and nothing else happens, maybe we'll go next Sunday and I can wear my mask and we'll check it out, because we have a relatively small church. So if I sit toward the back, I'm going to try. And then if we get there and we feel that it's not safe for me, then we'll leave and we'll know that we tried. But it's important for me from a mental standpoint as well to have a little bit of normalcy and to be able to do the things that mean the most to me. And, you know, I have been watching church online and I'm very close with the Lord, but it's different when you're there and you're live and you're able to feel that fellowship. And I miss that. So we'll see if that happens. But I really haven't been out too much. And we did get to go out to lunch the other day, and I'll talk about that a little bit because it was a big day for Bryce. But we had a gift card that we had received from someone. And so we went when the restaurant first opened, knowing that it wouldn't be crowded. And we're just making some wise decisions, you know, like that. But Bryce got to go and have, I would say, his first play date at a friend's house, at least for 4 or 5. He was there for more than 5 hours. That was a pretty big deal. And we made arrangements with our friend for her to come and pick him up. And she has a son and a daughter. They're 13 and 10. So Bryce is right there in the middle at 11. And they like to play the Switch. So we made sure they had games that they could all three play together. And his friend Deacon, he also likes dinosaurs. So they played with Deacon's toy dinosaurs. They played with Nerf guns out back. Miss Jessica took them to Chick-fil-A, and he was able to have lunch there. And he did really great. He was there from 10 to, I probably got there at 3:30. I went after I got my blood work to go pick him up. And he was having fun, and, you know, he was willing to go, but he would have stayed if he could have stayed longer. And I was super, super happy about that. And we had some concerns because we had a prior visit that we hadn't talked about on here, or maybe we did. It wasn't in the last episode. But anyway, we had some concerns about him just interacting when other kids get excited. That has been a problem for him, because if he hears loud noises or things like that, it can kind of get him off kilter. And so, I mean, it happened again with me last week watching football, and there was an interception. I got very excited, and when I get excited, I get louder and cheer. And he said, Mommy, that upset me when you did that. But he did a great job using his words. And then I just explained why it was a surprise. And he had the choice. He could get his headphones or he could stay in his room. And, you know, we're just working through all those things. But it's one thing when it's me, and it's another thing when he's at another family's house. So we had a good talk with him in advance, just explaining to him that most people will celebrate audibly with cheers or with yelling, or when they're excited, that's what they do. Some people are like Bryce and they just kind of jump up and down. He doesn't really make audible voices when he gets super excited. It's more with his hands go up and down and he jumps up and down. But, for others, they do. They cheer. They're excited. They yell. And we've got to get him to where he can learn to anticipate that can happen in a competitive situation, because that's really where that occurs. And if he can learn to relate that, then he'll learn how to prepare himself for that. So that's kind of our goal with him, is that, if something's going on as competition, then you recognize that could be loud cheering. And so, and it was really important to me also that Miss Jessica didn't tell her kids that they couldn't yell or be excited. They should have awareness of Bryce, but I wanted them to be able to be themselves, because I'm putting myself in their shoes when I was a kid. And if you had somebody over that you felt like you had to walk on eggshells and you couldn't be yourself, it's not really the friend you want to have over all the time, right? So I told her that, but they did great, and there were no issues with that. And I guess one time Deacon was getting a little loud, and Jessica pointed it out, and she said, Bryce goes, I'm good. It's okay. He can yell. It's good. I'm good. So, we had prepped him well. He recognized it. He handled it very well. We packed his headphones for him, but he never felt like he needed them, and he didn't wear them. And most importantly, he didn't come home and then get upset after the fact, because we've had that happen too. He keeps the brave front on while he's wherever he's at, and then he comes home and he completely melts on us. And none of that happened this time. So we felt like it was a win-win-win. Hold on. So Jessica had told me a few things that happened while Bryce was with her, which we always get a kick out of him. And so I thought I would share them on here. So you use an app for driving called Waze, which it lets you know if there's any police activity, anybody on the side of the road broken down. It's good for traveling, especially long distances. And it tells your speed. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Jessica, Bryce saw that she had that. And so he said, oh, you have that? My daddy uses that. Oh, you want me to use it? Yes. Okay. So she puts the app on, and then I guess he's like, uh-oh. And she's like, what? And he's like, you're going too fast. And I guess he called her out on however fast she was going. He told her what the speed limit was supposed to be as opposed to what she was driving. She says, I'm not speeding. He's like, you are speeding. You need to slow down. We need to be safe. So Bryce is very much a rule follower, and he's very concerned about safety. So on that same note, they were going to go to Chick-fil-A, and she takes a back road to the restaurant, and it's not very far and there's not a lot of traffic. So she told her daughter, who is 10 years old, that she could sit in the front seat so that her son could sit in the back seat with Bryce. Well, Bryce knows, because you've told him, when he's 12 years old, then that's when he'll be allowed to sit in the front seat. And he's counting down to that. So he's fully aware, for safety reasons, that he's not allowed to sit in the front seat. So I guess he was worried pretty much the whole drive that they were going to Chick-fil-A that her daughter was in the front seat. So finally the compromise was made. She said that she asked him, would you feel better if Deacon sits in the front seat and she rides in the back with you on the way home? And Bryce said, yes, that would make me feel much better. So I guess she had also said to him, well, it's a really short ride and we're going on the back road and there's not a lot of traffic, so we don't need to worry. It's okay. And he said, well, it was a short ride to my therapy when we got bumped in the car. So he would correct her on each thing, which was true, because a few weeks ago, I was taking Bryce to therapy, and we were at the red light near our house, the closest one to our house. Somebody started to go and then they stopped. So I hit my brakes, and then the car behind me didn't react fast enough to his brakes, and he bumped our bumper. So we went through the light, turned into a parking lot. And thankfully there was no damage. Nobody was hurt. It just was startling. And Bryce saw that I handled it with a lot of grace. In fact, the young man who hit my car with his vehicle was extremely upset, very, very, very apologetic, and kept saying over and over again how sorry he was. And I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. Let's look. There's no damage. You have no damage. I have no damage. Are you okay? He's like, yes. I said, okay, we're okay. I said, God protected us. We're good. All right. And he's like, that's what I needed to hear today. And then I gave him a hug. I felt so bad. He's the one that hit my car, but I felt so bad for him. And I flashed back to when I was a lot younger, and I remember tapping somebody's bumper in a parking lot, and they didn't take my insurance information. There was no harm. There was no foul. And they gave me grace and was very kind about it. And I repaid that day. And it was a good example for Bryce as well. But anyway, he hasn't forgotten that. And so he pointed that out, to Jess as well, which was kind of funny. And then the last thing she said, which would be another thing with Bryce, is they were in Chick-fil-A and there was a fly that was near where they were sitting. And when she said fly, I was like, oh no. And so I said, how did that go? And she's like, well, we ended up moving tables because it just wouldn't leave us. And finally she said, would we be better if we moved tables? And he's like, yes, it would be. So it's just those little things. But hey, if that's all, and she's awesome about, responding to all of that because she's very familiar with Bryce. I felt like that was just great. And the kids were great. And they actually had introduced Bryce to a new Switch game, which was the Disney Cars game. He loved it so much, and he was having fun with them. And they thought they had lost their Switch game, so they bought another cartridge, and then they found the one that was lost. And so the kids wanted to give that to Bryce as a gift, which they did when we were leaving. And he has been playing it ever since we brought him home, pretty much. And it was just such a wonderful, positive friend day. And in our world with autism, man, that is a gift. So I have talked a lot. I've given you a lot of space, and I know you got some things you want to share. So I'm going to let you roll from here.
Yeah, I mean, before he went over there, I kind of gave him a 5-minute lowdown of, what happens if you react badly to a loud noise when you're over at a friend's house.
You put a lot of fear in him. But
I didn't mean to put the fear in him, but I just wanted to give him facts, that if you scream back at somebody because they're having fun, they're not going to be your friend, and that you'll probably have to come home right away. Those types of things I told him,
I know.
Because of what happened prior to his other friends. It was not pretty, and it was it was just not a good situation. So I wanted to make sure that he knew, what a friend is and what a friend does in certain situations. And so I think he understood that. And, I also want to mention that, since your diagnosis of cancer, I mean, we've been battled because we're shining God's light on the situation, and we're praising God through the valley. And I feel like we were under attack like never before in our lives. Like just a couple of weeks after your diagnosis, somebody gained access to my email. They stole our credit card. They were changing passwords. And I've spent the last 2 weeks cleaning all that up, and then you got bumped in the car, and then we got the flu, and then, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, and that hacker placed a almost $300 order of nonsense items.
Yeah.
That ended up getting delivered to our house for things that we didn't want or need.
Our credit card
got
stolen.
Crazy.
And so it's just been a real trial for us in this valley, but we know that God is with us, and we're not giving up on God, and we're shining His light through this, and we have a lot of people praying for us because we're just. It just seems like attack after attack.
It is attack after attack. And, I was reading in Psalm this morning, and that's why it's so important to give Him praise and gratitude, because that deflects. Mm-hmm. And I was even telling you, I always have, well, I was going to say always, most of the time I do have praise music going on in my car. And I do feel like that helps battle some of the stuff out there with the crazies and the traffic and all of that, because the devil doesn't want to be around and hear those kind of things. So the more we can give praise and the more we can stay positive, and he sees that he's really not distracting us or getting us down, because distraction is a lot of it too, right? How distracting has it been for you to have to take hours out of your day every single day to do damage control on this fraud stuff? Mm-hmm. I mean, then you can't be doing other things like, it was part of the reason why we didn't even get on to do a podcast when we were in a good window in between sicknesses, because we were busy trying to do damage control there. So, we're going to get it attacked that way. But the verse that I read this morning that I thought, well, I'm going to share this. It's in Psalm 96:3. And it says, proclaim His glory to the nations, His mighty acts to all peoples. And I thought, wow, that's our podcast. I mean, we are to be on here where there are people from different nations throughout the world listening to us talk about the Lord and what He's doing for us. And even in bad times, you still give Him praise, because your joy should not be dependent on how your day goes. Your joy is dependent on your relationship with the Lord, and that peace that He'll give you when you know that it's Him in control and not you. And when you're surrendered to know that it's His ways and not your ways, and it's His plans and not your plans. And I can actually look at this and say, thank you, God, for choosing me to be the vessel, to be the light in this situation, because not everybody could do it. But He trusted me to be able to still stay positive and to still give Him glory when I'm really going through a lot of difficult things physically and emotionally. Praise the Lord for that. And I think those are your true tests. And when you really mean it, and sometimes I think you say it like you fake it till you make it on those days that you're really, really low. You just, that's okay. You have a day here and there where you're not feeling so great and you're vulnerable and emotional. But, we've been chosen. We've been chosen to do this podcast. He's prepared us for it. I was reading something in the lymphoma booklet that they gave us, and I don't have it handy, or I would read that too. But it sounded just like when we were introduced to the world of autism, and about, this is the journey we weren't expecting to take. This is something we didn't sign up for, but there's a group of people that we're going to meet that we otherwise would not meet. There are going to be nurses that I meet. There are going to be doctors that I meet. There are going to be fellow chemo patients that I meet in the waiting room or in the room with me when we're doing chemo, that I've already been able to be a witness and to be able to be a positive spirit around, because He's chosen us. And I think when we get these battles and these attacks that you're referencing, it's all how we respond to Him. And like you sitting there and now claiming that, we're not questioning God. We don't like when these things happen. Who would? But He has a reason and a plan for it. And if it's just to bring Him glory out of it, then so be it.
Yeah, so what I was meant to say is, there's a real spiritual battle going on, that we can't see. And so the Lord is shielding us from much worse things. And we're going to win. We win this battle in the end, no matter what. So got to keep your eye at the end of the road, and that we will get through this too, and we will climb the mountain back up to the top, one step at a time with God leading the way.
Amen.
And I wanted to share a couple of lessons that we've learned through this trial of having our email stolen and a credit card stolen. So, one thing that everybody should do, and I recommend, is to check and see if your email has been part of a data breach. And the way that you do that, and you can Google this, it's called Have I Been Pawned? And they spell pawned Pwned. And if you Google that, it'll take you to a website where you can put in your email address, and it'll tell you which data breach it was in, what information was released, and I'll tell you that if your email was involved in a data breach, there are people out there actively trying to get your password for your email. I logged into my Microsoft account, and there's a setting in there where you can go in and see unauthorized attempts at logging into your account. And every hour, sometimes more than once an hour, somebody was trying to gain access to my email account from all over the world. Russia, Turkey, China, all these places around the world. People are working hard, or they have these computers set up and they're trying to get your email password. And once they get that, all bets are off. They can get into your other accounts. They can do terrible things. So I just want to put that out there. And if you have Norton LifeLock, that's another way to know if you've been involved in a data breach. So we've switched emails. We still have parenting autism at att.net for now, but we've switched our personal emails. We've updated all of our passwords. I highly recommend two-factor authentication for your accounts that are online. Use your Face ID when you can, and just make sure that your internet and your passwords are as secure as they can be, because if not, it can be a complete mess.
Yeah, and if you think it's too time-consuming to do those things, trust me, it's a lot more time-consuming and stressful to clean up. And that's what we've learned. I said, you have to learn from every lesson, and we're learning from this.
We don't
save the passwords anymore.
Yeah, one of the mistakes that we made was using a similar password or the same password for multiple accounts. And once they figure out, what your password is, then they try all different variations of that, and they can get into other accounts. So it's a mess. But we've gotten through 90% of it, I'd say, and we're moving forward. It's a new year. I have things that I need to get done around the house while it's nice outside here in Florida before the heat comes. And so I was able to tackle a couple projects today. So I feel like we're getting back on track, and I can focus more on you, helping you.
I know. And I feel like I want to help you too. It's tough. I am limited with my health right now. I mean, I know I sound
your energy is
okay,
not
but my
what
energy
it used
is
to be.
terrible,
it's
and it's hard to walk.
You have energy in the morning, and then afternoon, not so much. And it's just, I think it's just going to be like this while we're doing chemo. Yeah. And I really hope and pray that after chemo is done, weeks after that, maybe months after that, you'll regain your energy, and we can just wipe this cancer out of your system. So
that's the goal.
That's the goal with the Lord's help. And, the prognosis, I think, is pretty good. I think we need to get through these rounds of chemo through the spring, and then see where we're at, and we just pray for good news at the end of those chemos.
Amen to that.
And we've already seen your blood work show positive signs.
This past Friday was the first time that we had improvement on the IgM. That was not a result of a plasmapheresis treatment. It was because my body seems to be responding to the chemo. So we're very happy and encouraged by that. So that's really what you can hope for. And I was going to say, and speaking of Bryce again, when I got the flu and I knew I was getting the flu symptoms when they started hitting me pretty hard that Thursday morning after Christmas, I called the oncologist's office and they told me, don't go to the walk-in center or walk-in clinic, go right to the ER because they're probably going to send you over there. So it was another one of those that you just woke Bryce up out of his sleep to tell him that I was going to the hospital again and that he had to get packed and he was going to Mamaw's. And I could hear him going, I'm so sad. I'm so sad. Daddy, I'm so sad. What's going on? I'm so scared. I'm so sad. And, and that is hard because he had no warning, no prep. And we know with Bryce's personality, the more you can prep him for something, the better. And it was really hard and sad. And you put some clothes together for him. And, it was a bit of a scary moment for him. But then we were able to call later, and he could hear that I was home and that we were doing okay. And that we had sent him to Mamaw's just to protect him so that hopefully he wouldn't get sick. Right. And praise God, he didn't. And neither did my parents, because we were praying for a shield of protection over them as well, because they're high risk, especially Dad. So, and I had been over there Christmas Day with the flu, not knowing I had it. So anyway, he stayed there for 3 nights without us.
And
did
very well.
He did very well. And so, I just want to say that through this, we've had to call on Bryce to do some more things for himself, to be a little more independent, to be a little more flexible than maybe he would be otherwise. And he's really stepped up to the challenge to do all of this. And he's handling it really, really well. And we're so proud of him.
Yeah, he's really doing well. And we hope everybody had a good Christmas, and that this year is going to be a happy and prosperous new year.
Yeah.
And I do want to mention that YouTube channel that, was it Lee?
Grace Oasis. Yeah, Mr. Lee.
Mr. Lee mentioned to us, and I just want to thank him for that. There's a YouTube channel called Grace Oasis, and each day they have it's probably like a reflection on a subject and then a prayer following. And it's really, really good. And, they happen to do one, or you found one about being battled.
It just happened to be in the cycle.
The rotation.
Yeah.
And it just hit at the right time. And it's so good. It's so good.
It's about 10 minutes to start the day.
Yeah.
And man, is it worth it.
It's really good.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I wanted to mention that.
Yeah. And speaking of Christmas, and again, kind of talking about Bryce, he did enjoy Christmas. I had mentioned before that we celebrate Christmas. We celebrate the birth of Christ. That's in our home. We have lots of manger scenes, and we talk about that. And that's definitely the primary focal point. But we also include Santa and snowmen and other fun things that the kids like in our Christmas celebration as well. And so for Bryce, we took him and Michael to see Santa the day that I knew I had to go back into the hospital because my blood work came back badly. And we had made plans to already go there. And it's like one tradition that we've been able to keep in our 19-year marriage. And I'm like, right. I want to keep this tradition. And we have our friend Marilyn and Gil that live, because it's about an hour from where we live. And they went ahead of us and stayed in line for Santa so that I didn't have to stand for very long. And she's done this for years, and she used to do it because it benefited Bryce, who didn't have the patience to stand in line. And now it benefited me because I didn't have the energy to do it. But it meant so much to me that we were able to go down and, see Santa. The boys were able to tell him what they wanted, have our lunch with them, and just have that Christmas tradition, because we always do that to kind of kick off the season. And then you went and took me to the ER after that. And then, we rolled from there. And then when we came home, I was able to just gradually decorate the tree and gradually put the stuff up. And we were able to really enjoy the Christmas season. I feel like with Bryce, he didn't miss a beat. And I was able to place the call to the North Pole to make sure Santa knew what was going on. And this year he wanted to leave Santa cookies, and he wanted to leave the reindeer some food. So we left carrots, and he had written a letter to Santa. And then I wrote, and he even had said, I wonder if Santa will write me back. But I had already taken care of that request for him. And so I'm going to read the letter. I think I have it handy. I'm going to go get it real quick because I think it will just give the listeners an idea of how we include Santa into our Christmas with Jesus as well.
Okay. We'll be right back.
Okay. So the letter said, Dear Bryce, thank you for being such a good boy this past year. You have been nice to others and a good friend. When you needed to, you said you were sorry and asked for forgiveness. When you needed to forgive others, you did it. God is happy and I am happy. And I drew a smiley face. Keep praying and doing what the Bible says to do. I know you wanted your surprise gift to be Mommy's cancer to be gone. I could not make that at the North Pole, but God is taking care of that request when it's time. Love, Santa. Mm-hmm. And so I know you had mentioned to me that one night at bedtime, Bryce told you he wanted his Christmas surprise to be for my cancer to be gone. Mm-hmm. And he didn't actually say that to Santa because I think he was more worried after I went in the hospital the second time that that's where he changed his surprise request. And so I didn't want him to feel disappointment. Mm-hmm. But most importantly, we have told him all along, that God tells Santa what to do, basically. Because he had asked me, actually, when we were down at the mall, he said, how does Santa know what we want and what to do? And I said, oh, well, God tells him, because God knows everything. He goes, you're right. God knows everything. Okay, now that makes sense. So that's what we want him to know. God knows everything, and God tells it to Santa, and that's how Santa knows so much. So Santa doesn't get God's credit, and everybody deals with things the way they want to deal with them. This is how you and I have chosen to do it. But most importantly, I really wanted him to know those things, and to know that God would take care of his request when it's time. And so when he read that letter, I recorded him reading it, and he got a little bit of teary-eyed. And so he's like, so Santa can't make that happen, but God will make it happen when it's time. I said, yeah. And then later when we were at Mom's, he was like, and Santa said, I've been a good boy and that I forgave and I asked for forgiveness. I said, that's right.
That really had an impact.
Yeah. And so we know Bryce well enough that, we want to tell him those things because that's what's most important to us. Not so much that he's in air quotes, good boy, but that he's learned the important lessons that are biblical, about forgiving others and asking for forgiveness. And we're really working on him understanding that and for him to be rewarded in essence and acknowledge that he's doing those good things. So I felt like that was really good. And I think that kind of gives the listeners the essence of how we choose, to celebrate Christmas and incorporate all the things that are important to us and yet keep a lot of fun. And Bryce actually got his first yard inflatables this year. So he was very excited about that because I know that's something you really weren't excited about having in the yard to deal with. But he has for the past 3 years wanted to get a blow up snowman. So he did. And he said he'd buy it with his own money. So I said I would split it with him if it was cheap enough. So he found one on sale on Amazon and he got that one. And he had told my friend Lori about it. So then she sent me a picture and said, would it be okay if I get this for Bryce? And it was Santa playing the guitar. So she sent a note saying that the snowman needed a friend. So then he had the 2 up, and then he got a 3rd one through the Special Olympics Christmas gift. So Bryce got to do that. He got to do Shop with a Cop with the local charity, which was great. And what did he get with that?
He got 2 games and a remote control 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, which
truck.
he loves. So, so, we've had a lot of charity and love poured upon Bryce this Christmas season. So for Bryce, yes, there is a lot going on in our world, but he's just been kind of rolling along with enough normalcy that he's good. Yeah. And Bryce hums a lot more than he has ever
before. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just hums and sings and we'll hear him whether he's in the room with us or if he's in the other room. And I just hear sounds of happy coming out of him. What were you going to say?
If he gets ice out of the refrigerator, he goes, he imitates the ice maker thing.
That is the truth. And if he's flushing the toilet, he does it to the sound of the toilet flushing too.
It's funny.
You hear, whatever it is.
Whatever the sound is.
He is going to hum along.
Which
and
is fine with
It
us.
is. It's super cute. And most of the time it's just that he's happy. He's like, So when I'm hearing happy sounds like that, I give praise to God for just protecting him from the heaviness of everything that we're going through, and for keeping a joyful spirit in our boy as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that is good for today. That brings everybody current. We've made it through this. Thank you for humoring me I know you wanted to do it too, but catching a good window where we could set this up and knock this out.
Yeah, we'll feel better in another week or so.
We will, and then we'll come back with some more. But for now, we just wanted to thank you.
Give an update.
For those who have reached out and let you know that we're okay.
Thanks for listening.
And Happy New Year, and we'll talk again soon.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.